Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I'm Chucky2009, and today we're going to be welding with some 7024. Basically, I'm just going to talk about it for a minute or two here, and then I got a couple joints set up. I got a handful of electrodes, and we're pretty much just going to go for it. And so you ask yourself, what is 7024? Well, it's kind of like 7014, which isn't a whole lot different than 6013, but the main characteristic of this electrode is that it is a production electrode. If you're working in a factory or a fab shop working on a huge job and you've got a lot of widgets to make, you got a whole lot of welding to do, nowadays you'd probably use flux core or MIG, some kind of a wire feed process for that application. But back in the good old days, you'd use 7024. These electrodes put down a lot of metal and they do it fast. And what I mean by that is that with this 1/8 inch 7024, you will cover more ground than you would with an 1/8 inch 7018. You can weld a longer joint with it. And you burn through these things pretty dang fast. You know, you start going, you just start flying down the welding joint, and because of that, it'd be very good if you have a lot of welds to get done. Now, these things are characteristically used on thinner, not so critical joints. The example that my teacher always used to use is they use them on grain bins, or used them on grain bins, but that doesn't mean they're not out there in larger diameters and they're used on thicker materials. There was a point in time in my high school welding class, my junior year, when I was legitimately like a month ahead of the rest of the class. My teacher actually had to find things for me to do to keep me busy and let everyone else catch up. And one day he's just like, hey, Stretch, you want to run these huge electrodes they just happen to have? Like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. And they were 7/32 inch 7024s, the biggest stick electrodes I've ever ran. And they were massive. They were legitimately like 3 feet long. And yeah, it was fun. But I used them to weld this 1/2 inch plate, single pass. And then this 3/8 plate single pass. Well, actually, I don't know which one I did first, but even though my fillet weld's got a bit of undercut, it was fun. This is the only time I've ever welded like 1/2 inch plate in a single pass. And let me tell you guys, that was the hottest welding I had ever done in my life. But yeah, that was an adventure. But anyway, to sum this up, 7024 is most commonly used when it's important to put down a lot of metal fast. Let's take a look at what the actual numbers in 7024 mean. Now, the first two numbers in 7024 represent that the filler metal has a tensile strength of 70,000 psi, and but that doesn't mean that a 7024 weld will be as strong as a 7018 weld. It would be closer strength-wise to a 7014, just because 7018 is a low hydrogen electrode. But I'm not going to get into that in this video, just in the interest of keeping things short here. The third number, the 2, means that we can only use this in the flat position and for horizontal fillets. And that obviously means like no vertical, no overhead welds with 7024. And the reason for that is because there's a very heavy layer of slag. The puddle itself is very fluid, and if we tried to use this out of position, it'd just be a huge mess. And the 4, oh, I don't really know what that means, but it's like a slag designation, and it's not all that important. The most important number is the third number, in this case the 2. And now, because of said heavy slag coating, it's a little bit too easy to accidentally get wormholes in your weld. And a wormhole, this thing here, it's caused by slag not going to the back of the puddle, getting trapped in the puddle. And this particular joint here is left over from my How Not to Weld video that I made a while back. This shows what happens if you use the wrong drag angle, and that's what we're talking about here, partly. So the way to avoid wormholes with 7024 is going to be, the best way in my opinion at least, is to start off the joint and you know, light up over here, then long arc over to the joint, start your puddle, and then just start welding. Now, while you're welding, it's important to use a steep drag angle. If you're perpendicular to the plate like that, you're about guaranteed to have wormholes, in my opinion. Definitely, if you try to push the puddle like that, it'll be a huge mess. So, instead of using like a normal drag angle, you're really going to want to use a steep drag angle. It's important with 7024 because I used to have problems all the time getting wormholes with this when I ran it in school. So, with that being said, I guess the next thing to do is to come over here and fire up the welder. And before I do that, I just want to give a special shout out to Wes, aka Welding 2012. He's the one that set me up with these electrodes. He's just like, hey Stretch, you want to make a video about 7024? I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool. So thanks Wes, and to everyone else, I'll put a link in the description to his channel. Highly recommend you check that out. He's got a lot of welding videos up there. So anyway, let's come over here to the precision TIG. Just fire it up. It's already set to 130 amps. I did run one of these joints, you know, before I started making this video just to get back in practice. And yeah, DC electrode positive. I'm pretty sure you can also use this on AC. And with that being said, let's start welding these joints. I like it. Now one other thing I will say, the Hobart electrodes we used to run at school legitly smelled like popcorn. These also legitly smell like popcorn, so I'm pretty sure they're Hobarts. Wes might know about that, maybe he'll comment, I don't know. So there you go, YouTube. I'm officially out of 7024, and that pretty much means that the video is kind of over. But it sure was fun to make. I really hope you guys have learned something. And well, you might be asking yourselves, what is Stretch's opinion of 7024? Well, IMHO, it is really easy to run once you get the hang of it. You know, you have to get used to starting before the beginning of the weld so you don't get that nice big wormhole there. And then you have to get used to running kind of a steep drag angle, but it's really easy to run. I mean, once you get those two things down, which isn't hard to get down at all, the welds pretty much just run themselves, and it's nice and easy, simple to run. And so overall, I like it. I think for its original purpose, it's pretty well outmoded now that it's, you know, 2012, but it's still fun to mess around with. And if you find some out there, definitely might be worth, you know, having some fun with. But this means that this video is pretty much over. But just one other thing here. This is what I ran with my last 7024. Notice my nice big wormhole there. It happens sometimes. This is the same kind of joint as that over there. And that is from the beginning of the summer when I made the stick weld smackdown video, in which I took a bunch of common electrodes and I hammered them apart. I ran welds with them and I hammered those apart until they broke just to see which one was strongest. But I couldn't get a 7024 weld in there because I obviously didn't have any 7024. But now that I do, that's what I'm going to do next. That'll be my next video. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more.